How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you remember a few videos back, I showed you guys how I make these small concealment boxes, or in this case, a key box. The only thing I told you was that there were going to be a few other videos to follow it. One to show you how I mount it to the wall. One to show you how to cut the insert, the foam insert, to put whatever it is that you want to put in there. And the other one to show you how to make this flag without the CNC, because in that video I made this flag with the CNC, but I used to make these without the CNC, and I'm going to show you how to do that so those of you that don't have a CNC can make this box without one. So essentially what I did was I revamped the design of these boxes to make them slightly bigger. But in any case, this was the old version of the box. As you can see, the flag was a bit smaller, and it was not made on the CNC. You can see the stars are glued on just like they are with my regular flags. And so that's how I made them, and you can make these the exact same way. I actually need to make another one of this size because I don't know if you can see that very well on camera, but during a craft fair, this thing blew off of the easel and hit the floor and got damaged, and it's all messed up, and I would like to try to salvage it. But in order to do that, I need to replace the flag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another one of these, but it's exactly the same way that you're going to make this one. So I'll talk you through it. I'll tell you what the differences are in the measurements and all that. And at the end of it, you should be able to make one of these the exact same way. So that's what we're going to do today. So stick around. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is make our flag. I'll cut it to length on the miter saw and then rip it to width on the table saw. Once that's done, we'll burn like any other flag project. I have an entire video on this. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's on my channel. I will also link it down in the description for you, and it tells you, my tips and techniques for how to burn wood the way that I do and the way that you see me doing here. All right, so we got this thing burned. The next thing that we need to do is get the union and the stripes laid out. Now, what size you go with as far as, how big your stripes will be, how big your union will be, how big your flag will be, it's all dependent on the size of flag that you want to use. So on these old versions, this again was one of the older models, the original design that I had for my key boxes. And honestly, I don't remember why I decided to go with the size that I went with, but I basically went with an 8 1/8 inch hoist or width for the flag, which if you use a US flag dimensions calculator, it will tell you that 8 1/8 is 5/8 inch wide stripes. I think the way I probably determined that was I kind of got a general idea of how wide I wanted it to be and kind of how long I wanted it to be, and then just did the math. And I started out probably like 1/2 inch stripes, 5/8 inch stripes, 9/16 inch stripes, just to see what the different sizes were. And for whatever reason, I don't recall what it was. I landed on 5/8 inch, and if you multiply 5/8 times 13, you get 8 1/8. So I think what I probably did from there is I plugged the 8 1/8 into the dimensions calculator, and that actually gives you a much longer flag than this is. And again, I don't know why I decided on this length and width, but it is what it is. I just decided on that for whatever reason, and I made it a little bit shorter than it normally would be. So this was actually these were actually 8 1/8 by 14. Instead of 15 and like 7/16. So it should actually be like a good 1.5 inches longer than it is. But you can play around with the length a little bit and get away with some leeway there, because sometimes you have some really odd measurements. But in any case, I made the template for these old original flags for the union in the size that it was for that size of a flag. And by the way, if you're making any kind of flag and you've never used one of those US flag dimension calculators before, I highly recommend it. It gives you every single possible dimension that you could need on these flags. So anyway, I made the union based on that 8 1/8 inch wide flag, and that's what I've always used, and that's what we're going to use today because I'm just making another one like that. Again, you know, I redesigned this thing, and when I did, I made the proportions bigger, and this template will no longer work for that particular flag, but I'm doing those on the CNC anyway, so I don't need this for that. And this will probably be one of the last flags, if not the last flag that I do this way. So in any case, what we do is we lay the template on here. Now that we've got everything burned and it's ready to be portioned up. All right, so you get your template set in there, then lightly mark it with a pencil. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to tape it off so that we can stain it. Again, like all my other flags, anytime stain is involved, I always use frog tape because frog tape will give you the least likelihood of bleeding underneath your tape when you use the stain. And honestly, I have never had a problem before. It has always worked for me. I don't know if I'm just lucky, because I know I hear other people that say that it doesn't work for them or it doesn't work as well for them, but it's always worked just fine for me. So I'm just lining this up with the marks that I just made. Okay. And then we'll get this stained. I always try to start from the tape side and brush away into the union. I don't know, I just feel like, you know, there's less likelihood that the stain will bleed through as opposed to going this way and pushing it toward the tape. So that's just the way I do it. Down here on the bottom, you're just kind of running with the grain, so you're not actually pushing it into the tape. So if you haven't seen my update to this How to Stain American Flag Project staining video, you won't know this, but I'm using actually the solid stain from Minwax as opposed to the semi-transparent because it works much better. It applies better. It applies like the old original formula, and it looks great. So if you haven't seen that video, definitely go watch it. And then the original staining video if you want to know what the codes are for how to get the original colors of True Blue, Scarlet, and Marshmallow. So we'll let this dry for a second. Doesn't take long. Just kind of let it dry to the touch, and then we'll put a second coat on it, and then we'll pull the tape, and then we'll be done. All right, let me just throw the second coat on real quick. And then we'll let this dry, you know, fully dry, so that when we put the tape on, because next time we'll have to put the tape onto the actual blue part, and you don't want it to come up when you remove it, so we need to let it dry completely. So I usually let it sit. It doesn't take too long, maybe an hour. We can pull this up now. And once that's dry, we'll tape it up and do the rest of it. All right, now that we've given this time to get nice and dry, now we got to do the rest of it. So what I'm going to do here is I need to cover up this line on this side. So I'm going to get as close to the corner down here as I can. Get that covered up. Make sure it's nice and sealed down. Now the rest of it we just cover with green. So we're going to cover the rest of the entire flag with green. We also need to seal this line up, so I'll just go all the way across there. So the only real negative to this is that it takes quite a bit of tape to do it this way. And this frog tape is not cheap. This stuff is pretty expensive. You know, I mean, it's not crazy expensive, but it's like $8 or $9 a roll, and you know, you're using quite a bit of tape. So all I do is I overlap these a little bit. Okay, so we've got the rest of the flag covered up here. I suppose you could do it the other way, but this is the way I do it. So I cover it all up with green. And right now what you're going to see is I'm going to mark off all the lines. Then I'm going to take a razor knife and cut along the lines on all of them for the stripes. And then we are going to peel out the red stripes and stain them, and the white will remain with the green. You know, like I already mentioned, these are going to be 5/8 inch stripes. So I'm going to take this tape measure, and every 5/8 of an inch I'll mark it. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Now we need to mark these on this end, and I'll mark these on this end because we're only going to the edge of the union. All right, once we got everything marked, we will mark our lines. Okay, as you can see, we taped off that line right there, so we don't want to cut past the end of our union. So we're only going to cut to there. So for the next step, I just take a razor knife and cut along the lines so that I can separate the tape and peel it off so that I can stain the stripes. Okay, now that everything's cut, we need to pull up the white stripes. So we'll start with this one. Remember, we start with red and we end with red. Once I realized my mistake, I corrected and started peeling off the red stripes instead of the white ones, and decided to just go back and fix that part after. So I just covered it back up, cut it again, and peeled the right ones off this time. And then I noticed I had a couple of little gaps between a couple of the stripes in the union, so I fixed those real quick. All right. So now that we got all the reds, not the whites, uncovered, we can now stain the reds all red. Now I'm just doing the top of the flag. I used to do the sides also, but now I just leave them as burnt wood, just because it's faster and easier to only do the top and not bother with the sides. But you can do it either way that you want, whatever, you know, is more appealing to you, and you know what you have time to do or don't do. So just like the blue, we'll let this sit for 10 minutes or so it's dry to the touch, and then we'll hit it with one more, and then we're done. So I let it dry for about 10 minutes or so, and then hit it with a second coat and pulled the tape back off. All right, and for the stars, I just buy these little 1/2-inch stars off of Amazon. They're not very expensive at all, and I will link them for you in the description below as always, so that you can go and get them for yourself if you want or need them. Now you just need to pay attention to what size of stars you need based on the size of your flag using that flag dimension calculator. So for the size that we're doing here, it's going to be this size, 1/2-inch. Now again, you know, these stars don't come in weird sizes, so they'll come in 1/2-inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch, you know, 1 1/4. Usually in quarter increments. Not all, you know, you might have to shop around vendors even to get them in those quarter increments, but you know, for the most part, you can find them, but you're not going to get like 9/16, 5/8, whatever. So what you have to do is you have to plan your size of your flag accordingly. And you also need to, you know, you can adjust a little bit. Like, I don't know, I don't remember if this size of flag is exactly 1/2-inch, but I think it's really close. And so I just, you know, moved it to 1/2-inch. You have some leeway there with what you can do with the stars as far as whether you want to make them a tiny bit bigger or a tiny bit smaller. It's not going to make that big of a difference. So, yeah, you gotta figure out what size of flag you're going to use, and you know, make sure you plan accordingly, and that includes your stars. So all we're going to do here is take these stars and we're going to put a quick burn on them, and then we're going to go stick them on that flag and seal it up, and it'll be done. All right, so just like my big size flags, I clamp the template down to the union and then use a pick to make a little divot where the center of each star should be at. Then I lay my stars all out in their approximate locations and get them ready to glue them on. I'm using Starbond Thick Clear here, but I've also used medium before, and black works, but generally the best thing to use is thick clear because it doesn't run around so much, and it, you know, you don't see it on the outside of the star if you use a little bit too much of it. And you just go along and do them one at a time. And what I like to do is I like to line them up and keep them straight and do it line by line until I get them all done. And once you got the stars on, the last thing to do is to seal the flag up. Again, my sealant of choice is lacquer for these, so I throw a couple coats on the back and 3 or 4 coats on the front, and it's good to go. And that's going to do it for this video today. This is how you make the small flags for the concealment boxes without using a CNC. I will do the last 2 videos after this one, which will be how to carve out the foam and how to hang the box on the wall. And then after this, I'm going to do a series on what you need to do to get ready for craft fairs, because that season is coming up. It's just started actually. So I'm going to tell you what I do, what I need, what I use, and try to help you get an idea of what you can use to make that easier for you, and how to transport your goods and everything else. So look out for that coming up next. As always, stay safe and happy woodworking. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.